the cameras and stuff
Okay.
because I don't have access.
All
Hello,
right.
folks. Welcome, internet.
Welcome, internet.
But yeah, welcome to my house.
How are you, man?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Yes,
All right.
looking forward to having a chat about your Profit Habits workshop. Sounded like I was very intrigued to hear about it. It sounds like the sort of thing I've been kind of thinking about doing, but not got around to. And lo and behold, you've actually got onto it. So I'm going to be
Yeah.
very interested in the reality of what people are doing there.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah. If you're watching by replay or with us live, welcome, welcome. We're happy to have you here. If you're with us live, feel free to ask questions in the comment sections. Happy to weave your questions into this presentation. As is our tradition, we're going to do the podcast here momentarily, kick it off and record, and then you'll see this show up on Spotify and Apple Play or Apple Podcasts, whatever it's called, in a few weeks. But yeah, great topic today. I am really excited about how the Profit Habits Workshop went, and there's some real nuggets, I think, that are takeaways that I think were sort of macro level ideas, but I think they're really, really helpful if we probe into them today together. So yeah.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Excellent. Right then. Well, as ever, if you're watching live or on the replay, just do pop any comments that you got. Sometimes we weave it into the show, but we can always, circle back and just comment back as well afterwards. So do make any comments you got, and we'd be love to hear from you always.
Yep.
Right then. Are you ready to rock and roll? Should we do this thing?
Let's do this thing, man. Let's do the
Excellent.
podcast.
Sorry, not doing very well. Sorry, I was just kind of waiting for something to happen.
That means
I'm doing the intro.
Let's start the podcast.
Let's start that again.
Let's
Let's start the podcast with Mike doing the intro. So I was thinking you were doing the intro for some reason. So, Jason, your Profit Habits Workshop has just ended, and I know you got some interesting lessons to learn for every e-commerce operator. And insights from real life are sometimes not so pretty, and there's a lot of stuff to work through. But on the other hand, they're real, and I think that's going to be very, very important. So, tell me more. What have you been learning with your e-commerce leaders in the Profit Habits Workshop?
Yeah, the workshop happened just last week, Monday and Tuesday, and then we had Wednesday, Thursday special meetings for VIPs. It was a fantastic event. We had a great time, a good group of people who were all focused on trying to get clarity and insight into the profit in their business, profitability. And we really, really, I think, found some interesting key insights together. Zach Martin is a CPA, and previous to becoming an e-commerce seller in his own right, he was a mergers and acquisitions consultant and specialist and valuation specialist as a CPA. So he did a ton of work in that regard prior to becoming a e-commerce operator. And so he was co-teaching, and Kyle and I taught sessions as well. And so we learned a ton from him. And then, of course, you learn from the people in the community as well. When people, ask questions or when they speak into the topics, you really start to see what's bubbling up and, kind of what's happening in the mind of e-commerce operators as it relates to profitability. And so that to me was really exciting. I made a little list that, I suggested you and I work through today of just those lessons and insights, sort of the high level stuff. This won't be technical or anything like that today. We just wanted to talk about sort of the big picture ideas that we think people can grapple with and bolt into their business quickly and efficiently for increasing profitability.
Sounds great. Bolt into your business quickly and efficiently, increase profitability. All sounds music to my ears. That sounds good. So, what's your first big takeaway then? I know you and I are discussing about this and really realizing between us, this isn't really kind of a technical thing, is it? The first point.
Well, the first surprise for me was when we started doing the marketing for this on Facebook. We not only didn't find success in Facebook, we found violent opposition. I would say not violent, but you know what I mean. Like we found rhetorical opposition on Facebook. It was amazing to me. Like we'd put up an ad and it basically said, learn, the 17 habits that can make your business more profitable, and Profit Habits Workshop. And the comments that came back were so jaded, negative, and unkind. I mean, we got literally called like, these are the Three Stooges. These guys probably never made any money in their life. They're just trying to make money, telling you how to make money through e-commerce. Like, all of the negative energy that like you could just tell the community at large had been somehow either burned by shiny objects of the past, or maybe they just put us into this as get rich quick content. So the first takeaway to me was just fascinating people's mindset. Like, here's 17 habits that can make you more profitable. You're a con artist. Like, no, I'm pretty sure I'm not, but that was very interesting to me. So it kind of has nothing to do with the workshop content or people. Obviously the people who came to the workshop are positive and upbeat and encouraging. We didn't have any kind of negativity in the workshop itself. But that pushback to me just really spoke into, I guess, people's mindset in terms of this topic, and how either wounded, defensive, just, kind of, it just was very, very interesting to me. So that's
Yeah.
the first takeaway is people have a lot of issues
Yeah.
here
I,
by the
I
profitability, I guess.
Yeah, it's weird that the word profitable would create that. I can absolutely understand why people would, shout about yet another advert, because of course both of us
Yeah,
probably see similar stuff in our Facebook feed and retargeted every 5.5 seconds by somebody selling
yeah,
some form of internet marketing. And I can understand why people would be jaded about that, but they don't normally use the word profit. They use things like income
mhm,
or revenue or sales, or
mhm,
even revenue is a grown-up word for that. Money normally, in or cash.
yeah,
And nothing against the word revenue or cash or money, but they're fairly crude words, whereas profit already to me says we're talking about something who's got a bit more of a grown-up financial approach. So
yeah,
that's odd that it's produced that reaction. I don't know, maybe that's they're just lumping it all in together into the get
yeah,
rich quick online kind of marketing. Maybe it's
yeah.
just Facebook
I
more
think
than profit. I don't know.
Well, yeah, maybe.
I don't
I
know.
mean, and I didn't really mind that people spoke their mind. I mean, I don't like to be called one of the Three Stooges, although I did love that show growing up as a kid. Do you know that show? And
I
you
don't know, I've heard of it, but no, no,
what?
no, no.
Okay, come on. You have to watch YouTube. Three Stooges episodes are
Okay,
hilarious,
I'll
but
check it out.
they were just comedy group. So I didn't mind the pushback per se, but what it unlocked to me was just it was just so obvious that people have bad psychology around this stuff, where they are just aggressively fighting back against this phrasing or words or ideas, untrusting maybe. And fair enough. I mean, like, if people didn't know us and didn't know that we had run our own e-commerce operations and had seen our, I guess, bona fides, as they say in resume building, I mean, our qualifications, fair enough. But I think it reveals a basic nature in our mind, is that we're either usually all in on something. Like, we buy the shiny object and we sink our mouth into the hook of the shiny hook of the lure of, like, get rich or whatever, if that's the genre. Or we're violently opposed sometimes. I mean, and I guess in a way it's better to have a super negative pushback, because at least it's a polarizing, message. But to me, this is a takeaway, and it speaks to all of us. Like, um, when it comes to the topic of becoming more profitable, managing our finances in our business, really understanding what's happening at the profit level, finance level, do we bring our own mental baggage to it, presuppositions, negativity, resistance? Do we avoid it like the plague? And then once we're confronted with it, we're like, screw you, I don't want to hear anything about this, Um, I don't know. I mean, that was to me very interesting. So you're muted.
Pressing too many keys here. Yeah. I guess, yeah, I wonder whether it's a Facebook thing or an advertising thing more than it is a profits thing. But
Yeah.
it may be both. It may be that
Mhm.
people have these negative connotations with it.
Yeah.
So, so that was the first public, pushback, and the Three Stooges. Your next role on
Yeah.
the internet, it seems,
Mhm. Yeah.
by popular demand. What's the second insight then? I mean, what about the people who are actually on the workshop? What are
Yeah.
their feelings around profits and
I
profit
think one
measuring?
of one of the sentiments people you could quickly appreciate, and Zach really spoke into this immediately. I mean, he said in one of his presentations, I think he's done over 3,000 corporate tax returns, and his first commentary was, if it's confusing, it's not helpful, and many people are confused by just the tools and the sorting mechanisms for information related to this topic. And that's one of the first big barriers is just confusion. And a confused mind always says no or go slow. And so I think that was one of the first things that, he works through, and he has a super clean e-commerce P&L, profit and loss statement that he uses, like a one pager that has been refined over years from his consulting practice in his own company now. And it's his whole thing with it is it has to be simple, and it has to be very clear and straightforward, or you'll lose people. And he's learned that the hard way through being a consultant or whatever. But I think that's true for all of us. This can be so just terms, and there's so many terms, there's so many ideas, there's so many little nuances and back alleys of finance and little cul-de-sacs of thinking and logic and decision making that it can become very overwhelming. And I think that's probably one of the big challenges with people getting really good at this, is just the overwhelm that is associated with the topic. Yeah, and I think that's something for people to work through.
Yeah, I think a lot of life comes down to the 80/20 of the 80/20. So in
Hmm.
other words, the trouble is, I can't remember who said this, but yeah, it's probably an American because it's kind of got a down at home simplified feel, which is you got to take all the pieces out of the jigsaw before you can assemble them. And the trouble is when you put all the pieces in place, if it's 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, I'm gonna follow through this metaphor here. My wife's a big fan of jigsaw puzzles, but she enjoys them. A lot of people, if you've got a business and you chuck all your financial statements on the table, literally they're on paper or metaphorically, if we don't enjoy it, then what you've got is a 1,000-piece puzzle that's a complete mess, and that's a depressing moment, isn't it?
Hmm.
But I think
Hmm.
a good CPA and a good bookkeeper is going to help you put the picture together. But then also, in order to do that, only certain things matter, like edge pieces matter, and certain colors you can identify. So there are certain things that
Yeah.
in the end matter more than others. There are some things that are going to really help you, some things that are really going to frustrate you and are best left to later. So
Hmm. Yeah.
I guess it comes down to, being willing to get your hands dirty, but also having some
Mhm.
help in
Yeah.
how do I construct this into a meaningful picture? Because
Yeah.
I guess it just strikes me that it's from denial, which is
Hmm.
kind of clear, but it's black, but it's at least one color. It's complete darkness.
Yeah.
And then you've got the mess, which is the horrible bit most people think
Yeah.
accounting's about.
Yeah.
But then I think what comes at the other end of it that many of us don't get to, and I'm fighting my way through with a series of bookkeepers, but I'm determined to go there because I've seen it in the businesses of like
Hmm.
8 figures, they've gone on to 8 figures in
Hmm.
e-commerce, that clarity that they get on the other side makes it very much easier, not
Yeah.
harder,
Yeah.
easier to make good quality business decisions and have some kind of reliability to see if I pull this lever, this does this, and if I do this, this does this, and to make quality
Yeah.
decisions. So I guess that middle bit's just messy, is my experience. I mean,
It's
does that tie in with what Zach's been saying and seeing? Or?
Yeah. I think what you just described reminds me of this, whatever it is, stages of grief, 7 stages of grief or whatever people go
Almost,
through.
yeah,
It's like step 1, like denial, step 2, like,
yeah,
depression.
acceptance or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Then
something like that.
finally, yeah.
There
And I
is
think,
something like
yeah.
that. You're right, because I've been at masterminds with some pretty serious e-commerce operators, and one guy literally had a nosebleed, and it turned out that he'd been up since 4 a.m. trying to get his books right, and it was literally making him physically ill. And there is
Wow.
something
Yeah. Yeah.
that's not, yeah, that's unusual stress response maybe, but
Yeah.
it was kind of a dramatic indication of how some people's relationship to their books are. Really.
Yeah. I remember Tim Ferriss in his book, For Our Work Week, talking about stress and use stress with like an EU in front of it or something. And
Yes.
the use stress or whatever is not a used term in American English anyway, but
Yeah.
the idea is that it's good stress. It's
Yeah.
stress, this kind of stress like a workout,
Yes.
and it helps you tune things up. And I think a lot of people with their profitability and their in their business books, they'll go from a denial to a crisis.
Hmm.
And if they can get things sorted in that crisis period, then they come out of it better, stronger, more organized, and more clear on their numbers. And sadly, sometimes they don't come out of it though. And so the better practice would be to get ahead of the curve and get good modeling and insights and concepts that you go after, so that you've got a vision to build towards. But yeah, I totally agree with your kind of that those stages of clarity in terms of management, and then I think that's important for people to work through and understand. Yeah.
What the only thing I would say, and this isn't necessarily I'm sort of borrowing insight here, but there's a really great distinction. I'm going to even show the book because I have it so close to my desk because I find it incredibly clarifying and helpful, which is financial intelligence for entrepreneurs. I've mentioned it before. Sounds
Mhm.
like Zach's been through similar stuff to the guys who wrote this. Joe Knight, Karen Berman, sadly no longer with us, but he makes a distinction between accounting and finance. And I think
Mhm.
accounting is the painful bit where you've got to put together the chart of accounts and then plug all of your every single transaction in the journals and make the, make the thing balance and reconcile stuff. And I found that horrendous. And
Yeah.
that's why I get bookkeepers to do that bit. But if you don't go through that bit, then you don't get the fun bit, which I find fun. Maybe I'm just a kind of weird nerd, but I'm not an accountant by any stretch of imagination. But I love this stuff, which is you get to analyze the bigger picture results.
Right.
And when you've got those clean financial statements, you can look at liquidity ratios and other things, and then you can start to really pull levers relatively straightforwardly in terms of this quarter we need to go and negotiate with the suppliers to get better credit because
Mhm.
that does this to our cash flow, which means we can grow at this much the next year. And then it starts to translate into stuff we really, really want.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to sit
Yeah.
around measuring numbers. I mean, that's mental hernia, isn't it? And I think
Yeah.
the point is that's just a stage on the way to getting the clarity, and the clarity gives you the insights, and then you can take the action. That's been my experience. I'm on the journey there. I'm not there, but I've certainly seen it with the better clients that I've got, with the better businesses. They have that clarity and they
Yeah.
have the confidence that comes with that.
Yeah. Totally right. Yeah.
Anyway, so that's some of my insights. What's the third insight, would you say, third takeaway from your
Yeah.
workshop?
I think the third big takeaway is that the journey from a focus on top line sales and revenue to to a focus on profitability is a process of maturation, and it's a journey. And all of us, when we start, if we're kitchen table entrepreneurs in the e-commerce world, the first goal is sales. Can I sell something? And can I sell something at scale? And can I sell something at scale and have money left over at the end of the process? And that's the first goal, and it rightly should be. But as those businesses grow up and mature, the shift becomes increasingly onto profitability and managing the bottom line, the net profit. And, depending on how hard the grind is to get the top number to work, you know, sometimes the bottom number is or isn't really clear to people. And, Cinnamon and I say this all the time in our story, but, for the first year, our total sales were $12,000 on eBay and we made no profit. The second, but we didn't even know if we made profit or not. But the second year, we only made $12,000 in top line sales again, but we were clear that we didn't make any profit at least, so we were getting better as we went. And then the third year we tripled top line and we made profit. And then we tripled or doubled again. And over the next few years, we doubled and tripled and doubled and tripled like that for several years in a row like that. But because of the slow 2-year grind, we actually kind of focus on profit all the way. But other people who just explode with success on Amazon, typically, their top line number is just like a rocket. It just is. The question isn't can you sell, it's how much can you get to sell. um those businesses sometimes are just like the top line's taken off so fast, the bottom line is sort of like, what now, how, like, there's just less clarity. And so I think that journey is what I've come to appreciate more and more. And there's no
Mm,
judgment there. I mean, it's not like there's no negative or sentiment or judgment about it. It's just a process. And I think
mm,
people getting clear on that journey being real for them. And if they're at one point of it, they're not clear on the next steps in the journey, um, then having a group that speaks into it together in a mastermind or whatever, like you run, I think helps people. Because then they understand, okay, this is where I'm at in this journey. This isn't the whole thing. This isn't what it
yeah.
always works like. This isn't how it will always appear in my mind or to me. Over time, I'll change my understanding and thinking about what's happening mathematically and in the books of my business. So I think that's an interesting takeaway.
Hmm. I would say a few reflections on that. The first one is let's talk about the mastermind thing first. I think what happens with the peer group is interesting, but the sort of psychology, because what you're referencing today is a lot of psychology
Yeah,
around profit and profit measurement, I guess, which is interesting. So it's
yeah,
quite an unusual crossover.
meta.
People talk about psychology and marketing all the time, but that psychology and profit is probably an under discussed topic. So what I
Mhm.
see happening is a couple of things. Sometimes people's businesses do exactly what you said. They go onto Amazon, they make a ton of revenue, and they don't realize they have no profit, which is a sad day.
Mhm.
Normally,
Right.
by the time they get to the 10K collective mastermind, they're not in that state. But I've certainly worked with
Right.
one-to-one mentoring clients in earlier stage
Yeah.
startups. The other one, though, is sometimes people come to a mastermind and go, "Oh, wow, 30% profit margin for my entire business, like the whole thing, not just gross margin, is not typical. Okay, I've got a really great business." And they look around and
Mhm.
people with a 5% margin are like, "Oh, my
Dang.
5% is not good. That's not good. I,
That's
I
right.
thought I was struggling, but now I really am."
Yeah.
And it gives both of them a good sort of reality check. One is like,
Mhm.
"Oh, my business is better than average. I thought
Special.
this was normal. This might be a pretty sellable asset." To which the answer is, in one case, yes, it is. And one of my mastermind members recently got a very, very nice exit for 5 times EBITDA, which for an Amazon only focused business, very good.
Yeah.
Wasn't even selling in the US, so that's very good multiple these days. And then somebody else is like, "Oh, 5%." I'm like, "Yeah, you really have a problem." So it puts things in perspective. Sometimes a sad realization, sometimes a happy one. So that's the
Yeah.
first thing. The peer group thing, I'm
But
completely sold
but
on for that
to
reason.
to to jump on that idea, the only
Yeah.
way that works is if you're in a conversation with trusted people where you can say,
Yes.
"Okay, I know my numbers. I'm gonna put it on the table. Our top line revenue was this, and our net profit was this as a percentage or whatever." And
Yeah.
you're comfortable sharing that, and other people are comfortable sharing it as well.
Yeah.
And then you do get those amazing like aha moments where like, oh, okay, you know. So I think that's the power of it is relationship, being in that
Agreed.
dynamic.
Trust. You need to
Yeah.
be very trusting to be that vulnerable because
Yeah.
people are much more embarrassed about their profit than they are about revenue, and kind of
Hmm.
rightly so. But no, I
Yeah.
agree with that. You have to have the right culture, which is why I think the culture that we developed in just over time, it's a bit like weeding a garden. It's not just a formula.
Hmm.
It is a valuable thing. Now, the other thing, talking about what you were saying about being very focused on revenue and then gradually realizing profit, I think is a natural thing when you go through different phases of growth. But what can happen is that the entrepreneur's mindset is no longer aligned with where their business is at. So I just
Hmm.
happen to have a set. I didn't prepare this, but I just happen to have a set of slides handy from something else I've been looking at earlier with Mark Andreessen. Great talk about the life of a startup. It can be divided into two parts: before product market fit and after product market fit.
Hmm.
And he says, before this, you need to focus obsessively on getting that, do whatever is required. Now, he says extreme things: change people, rewrite your product, move into different market, raising fourth rounds of, lots of things. And then would people be disappointed if your product disappeared? If yes, then you've got something. If not, then you haven't. Now, without getting down the rabbit hole here, I think, let's put it very simply: when you're in startup phase, to see if the product, if there's a product adoption, the simplest metric, and in some ways the most reliable, is revenue, right? Can you sell stuff? I mean, units sold in
Hmm.
some ways, but revenue, conversion rates, all of those things. And that's entirely appropriate to obsess about revenue when you've got a new product line or let alone a new business. What I think it comes adrift is when you keep that obsession when your business is moving into the next phase of growth, when you need to track the growth phase with the mindset around profit. And I think
Hmm.
that's when
Hmm.
sometimes there's a pain point that can arise, in my experience. What do you think that ties in with what you're saying, or is this
Yeah,
a
absolutely,
different one?
absolutely right. I mean, I think those they're just key insights, and in every it's like going over a different hill out on a journey. It's like, oh, new this is a valley, this feels different than a mountaintop. It's like at every step of the journey you're going to see new things, like, oh, I'm in a swamp right now. How do you
Yeah,
you know how do you get out of a swamp?
yeah.
um and that's kind of what it's like with your your business profitability and finance at the top level, at the high level. And I think you do start to learn those concepts the hard way. I mean, we all have to learn them, and you won't learn them by uh, you know really just hearing about it, but you go through it and you learn it, and I think that's key. So yeah.
Yeah, I think reflection on experience can be valuable. Frameworks can help make sense of emotional experiences. They don't take away the
Hmm.
pain, but they give it meaning. I think,
Yeah.
like the whole stages of grief thing.
Yeah.
Um, so, what's the fourth big takeaway from your Profit Habits workshop?
Well, it ties right into that, actually. The fourth insight, I think, is that I believe us as a community, e-commerce operators, um, underinvest or not willing to invest in profit and financial management education. The workshop worked great. We had a good community of people doing it. So this isn't a commentary about the specific workshop, but I would just say as a group, I think there's just so much denial and kind of avoidance of these topics because it feels like pain. And so I think not investing in education is a huge mistake. Now, I'm a reader, so I like books. I know you are too. You're always referencing books that I always think, oh, I need that book. But there's tons of educational content out there. Sometimes you have to fight for, if you get into the academic college book lane or section of the bookstore, you're going to be bored to death. But there's other stuff out there. Some of it's real pop culture and commercial. Rich Dad Poor Dad books are obviously the most commercial in the U.S.
Yeah.
On these topics, but there's other content out there as well. Dave Ramsey's Entree Leadership, um, and I think people just generally aren't willing to put in the work at that level sometimes to say what content's available to me, and how can I quickly consume it and metabolize it into
Mm.
my business. So I mean, I think that's a key takeaway as well.
It's interesting. I guess in the end, again, it's a psychological question, which is a critical one, by the way. It's what we associate pleasure and pain with. And unfortunately,
Yeah,
it's not a simple path. I guess
yeah,
that a lot of the time, pain is the motivation to get into action,
yeah,
but having a vision of where something can go will keep you in action. And the truth for most of us, as Donald Miller references in Storybrand. Now, this is interesting because it's about marketing, and that's the psychology of getting people to buy our stuff, right? Broadly speaking. But this applies to ourselves, which is that if you tell a story like so and so decided to get fit and then he went to the gym, then people automatically switch off. First of all, there's no drama, but secondly, it's not how
hmm,
people work. People normally have a moment like his girlfriend left him because he was too fat, and then he went, "Oh my god, I need to go to the gym." Or whatever ridiculous story. This is not the best storytelling, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
don't be offended if you have weight. It's just a bad example. But the truth with an entrepreneur is they're going to do stuff. They have an exciting Q4. I've been there with that. First big Q4, you go, wow, all these sales. And then you look at the numbers and it takes you ages to go through them, and that's painful. And then the even more painful thing is you look at it and go, oh, I actually paid Amazon to do that. I didn't make any profits at all. And
yeah,
then you start. And this is the thing, you go in waves, don't you? But I think
yeah.
the pain you associate with ignorance is greater than the pain you associate with
Hmm,
denial. You
hmm,
get into knowledge. And I think sadly, I wish I could say it was different, but my experience of that and the people I know is there are waves of pain, and thank God also on the other side of it, insight and great things happen from
yeah.
that. But I think that's really how it works that I've seen. I don't know if that's been the same with you and your clients, but
Sure. And if you put this whole topic into the same category as, getting in shape or, making your yard look amazing or, anything that you immediately in your mind was like, step one, hard work. Like, yes, dang it.
absolutely, yeah,
But so
yeah,
here's the thing about it is that just creates a context in which those who are willing to do the hard work will crush it and succeed and be awesome. And the competitors in your space who are playing around and don't know their numbers, as Warren Buffett wisely said, when the tide goes out, you find out who's been swimming naked. And the reality is, good times are fun for everybody. Like, yeah, we're all making money. Bad times are when the smart marketers and the smart finance driven sellers will be like, "Oh, we got this." We know what's happening in our business. And I'm so, part of it to me is it's a opportunity and also sort of a commentary in the industry. Um, you know, that's just the reality of it. And I think that creates a context in which the great operators survive and thrive, and the people who are riding a trend or riding a wave or have gotten some success but really don't have that solid foundation of financial understanding, they will come to a point in their business where they crater it, and it will
yeah,
be them that cratered it. And I think that's the, and I'm of course there are contexts in which people get ripped off or they get, abused by some kind of bad other out external force, but all things being equal over time, we are responsible for the success of our business financially. And it,
yeah,
it will be the people who really have their heads screwed on straight and have spent the time and energy privately. I think it was Muhammad Ali who said champions are made in the gym, something like that.
yeah.
That's the sentiment. And it's like, wow, it stinks to have it be in that category of topics. I wish this was super easy, you know. but
But
it is what it is.
I would say, just to put a more positive, or just a spin, but a more positive relationship to sort of financial insight. I would say I'm personally, even though my personal financial measurement is a bit messy, and I'm working on it, and I'm in conversation with some people to to get the books in more in order. I'm still very, very excited conceptually by it, and I
Mhm,
absolutely believe I'm on solid ground there. And
mhm,
here's why: because I think it's not just about survival. And you are, by the way, absolutely right. If you're not solid on your numbers right now in e-commerce right now with physical products, but also probably other things will come at us economically over the next couple of years. We're in interesting times, as the Chinese curse says. um, but it's not just defensive. It's if you understand the numbers, you can pull levers that are quite strong movements, but safely, because you understand. It's like a racing driver knows how to drive into a corner at 180 miles an hour, and
yeah,
it's perfectly safe. Whereas they will break down to 20 miles an hour for another corner, because that's the safe speed, and they have that expertise and
yeah,
judgment to know what a safe speed is. And my feeling very strongly from the businesses that are well run financially that I've worked with, who maybe have other weaknesses that I help them with, but they have really a solid feel, a feeling of safety, and knowing
yeah,
how hard they can drive the business without going off the track. And that's an amazing
yeah,
positive growth spurt thing. I mean, the business that I've seen blow up most has got the best possible numbers. I mean, there's no coincidence there that
yeah,
I've worked with a business. They came in with £2.5 million a month or something in their best months, and they went out with about £250,000. I mean, they went out with about
mhm,
2.5 million. I mean, it was just
yeah,
100% doubling each year for 3 or 4 years in a row,
yeah,
and they had the best CFO and the most clarity on the numbers,
yeah,
as well as all the other entrepreneurial things, creativity, risk taking, but very judged risk taking.
yeah,
So for me, there's an excitement about that.
mhm,
If we could perhaps get people to buy into more, they would be more invested in education
mhm,
about profit, I guess.
yeah,
Anyway, I'm rabbiting on here. What's the next
yeah.
insight that you've got that you think people need from the workshop?
Yeah, this one's really interesting, and hopefully, it's an encouragement to everybody. Hopefully, where this isn't just a list of negativity today, but this one I think is an encouragement, and that's the fact that I think what I've realized through doing this focus on profit, the training and all these conversations, is that it's pretty rare for people to have a financial or business mentor, and most people are in a vacuum of their own thinking and just, I guess you could say, an isolation of them and their QuickBooks account and their, Stripe account, PayPal account, or whatever it is. And it was like, how do I figure this out? Um, and what I've come to realize and really appreciate, to be honest, is the fact that Cinnamon and I started our work on eBay together in 2007, 2008, and we've always done it together. So there was two people who could always, if I had a question about the number, she'd look at it. If she had interesting insights in the number and questions, and we talk about it, and we basically took the best and, kind of the thinking, and iron sharpens iron, I guess. And then early on, I guess it was probably 2010 or so, we started meeting weekly with my, mentor, Ron. We go to breakfast every Saturday morning, and we talk about business stuff every week. And he's run, a low margin business for 30 years and done incredibly well. And so I didn't realize how unique, I guess, or special that really actually was until I, started to talk to other people about these topics. And they're like, well, I don't have anybody to talk to. And and so there you go. I mean, I think that's sort of an interesting insight, and I would just encourage everybody, figure out how to find a local business mentor, somebody you can meet with, even if they're just, even if it's not perfect, because no
Yeah,
one is perfect,
no,
no
no.
relationship is perfect. But if there's someone who has been in business for a long time and they have the mental and emotional energy to meet with you regularly, if you buy them coffee, and they have time in their life to do it, maybe they're a retiree or something like that, um, meet with them, ask
Mm,
them questions, hear their stories, learn from their stories, and put hypotheticals in front of them and see what they say. Maybe they'll only be right 60% of the time. But if you overlap that thinking with what you know to be true, and you can integrate it into what your situation is, you'll be infinitely more, uh, you know, solid in terms of your thinking. It really is a, you know, there's a wisdom in a multitude of counselors type situation, and getting one is, I think, it should be a priority, I think, for every e-commerce operator. And that would be the first thing, would be business mentor. And that's not a paid thing or anything like that.
No, sure.
That's just a friend, or a, kind of a local acquaintance that you could say, you know, I have somebody who I can speak to about hard challenges in my business. So I think that's a really uh, important thing for people to think about and to look into.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I would differentiate parts between it could be paid in the same person, but it could well be that you pay a coach
Hmm.
or a consultant
Yeah.
and you have a mentor, which is rather different. I mean, I use the word mentor on my site. I've decided that I'm going to change that recently. I haven't changed it yet to mess with the URLs and things, but for people who are starting out, that's an appropriate word. But I'm working with
Hmm.
people who are already into revenue, and profits. The interesting thing, probably one of my most successful clients at the moment, really often we just, he says, I'd be interested to know your thoughts. And
Hmm.
sometimes he's wise enough to not say anything and say, I'd want to know your thoughts first. I don't want to tell you
Hmm.
what I'm thinking. Okay, if you want to do it that way. Sometimes I
Hmm.
will do the other way. And then
Yeah.
he'll say, yeah, you're thinking the same stuff I did. I just wanted to check. So a lot of it's a reality check. It's just like, am I going crazy, or this feels like X? Is that makes sense? It
Yeah.
does. And then I'd add this nuance. So
Yeah.
it's just having a reality check and having a way to refine your thoughts.
Yeah.
The other experience I have with people, especially, and you must have this a lot, Jason, but when somebody comes on a call with you and they haven't had a consultant before, and they've been operating their business and they've maybe got a small team, but it's basically them. It's like a sort of rush of stuff they just get off their chest. And I did this with you when you were my consultant slash
Hmm.
mentor,
Hmm.
the same thing.
Hmm.
And after about 15-20 minutes, they're starting to sort their own problems out because they've had a chance to articulate it. And once they've heard their own voice,
Catharsis.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, it's not just that. It is kind of emotional catharsis sometimes,
Yeah.
like, oh my goodness. But then
Yeah.
sometimes it's just hearing your own voice, making sense of this stuff. People reflect back to you what you said, and then you think, oh yeah, you know what? I think I found my own solution. Sometimes, which is not the
Hmm.
same process as a mentor, by the way. But I guess
Yeah.
it's another thing, isn't it? That
Well, we should
I've,
talk through that. The
yeah, we
difference
should.
between a mentor that's local to you and a paid coach or consultant.
Yeah.
And I would make a big distinction between those two,
Mm.
because you and I are both in the coaching consulting industry, for e-commerce. And but a local mentor is different in my mind. And here are just a few
Yeah.
obvious nuances. A local mentor you may meet with and talk to in person. That's very different than a virtual relationship. A local mentor is someone who you don't pay for their advice, in my view. Well, you don't be, and there's opportunity and value there. The reason it's interesting to me for it to be somebody who just have as a friend level conversation is, um, they have to be sufficiently motivated intrinsically in their own right and in their own mind to want to meet with you. And profit motive or monetary motive is off the table. It's like, it's not about money. That means it's a different relationship. And it also means that because it's not about any kind of money transaction, it's a a much, much longer term opportunity. I mean, I've met with Ron since 2010. If I was paying him monthly for his advice, I would not still be talking to him. I just know myself. I mean, I don't think I would do that for, 11, 12 years. And so that's the distinguishing characteristic in my mind between a local mentor, that you can find, and you should, and then coaches, of course, I'm not anti-coach. I'm all, I'm pro-coach. I am a
Yeah.
coach, but
Yeah.
I do think that those are obvious differences that people should
Yeah.
sort through and have both, because the answer is both and not either or. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree. I
Yeah.
think that actually, one thing we've got to give ourselves a break on is, if you think about child's education and how much money it takes to get people to pretty basic abilities, and like people,
Hmm.
when they're adult learners of the piano and then adult learners of business, they're always paranoid about the fact that children learn incredibly quickly.
Yeah.
My experience of piano teaching in the past, no, that's not true. They learn very slowly. They
Yeah.
learn their ABCs and their alphabets pretty slowly. They learn to speak
Hmm.
slowly. They even learn to walk slowly, and they learn to do any skills like playing the piano or riding a bike or rounding up maths slowly. But we pour, as parents and teachers pour
Hmm.
money and time and
For
effort into it
years. Yeah.
because we know the payoff will be big. And I think we need to give
Yeah.
ourselves the same grace that
Hmm.
it is going to take money and effort. Sometimes it's paid, sometimes it's different. It's developing a relationship, having the courage to talk to a mentor. There's always some kind of cost, and we need to have multiple people helping us, and we need that over time. I think that's just a
Yeah.
reality. To
Yeah.
try and
Totally.
starve ourselves of that is to do ourselves a disservice as business people. I think it's just not. it's
Yeah.
not mentally possible to survive in a vacuum. I think
Yeah.
somehow,
Yeah.
my take. So, what's your next insights around this stuff?
Yeah, the next one is a follow on, if you will, but it is an interesting insight that um, there are. I guess I didn't really honestly know this, but there are really vast differences between people who will support you in terms of your tax filing and your tax situation. And in the U.S., everybody knows go find a CPA, certified public accountant. You want somebody that has that credential. In the UK, it's chartered accountant, I think is the phrase. And so we all know that, but the quality of what you get from those people is a massive spectrum that I honestly didn't quite understand. Because, and I'll describe it this way: when we found our CPA, he always spoke into our business in terms of optimizing for tax efficiency and profitability, and would just answer every question we had. And we had questions, and he would take the time with us as a part of the process of doing our filings. And then we started meeting with him more than once a year, because it just was so much, learning and insight. And he was ready, willing, and able to speak into our business. Other people have a very, very different experiences with their CPA or chartered accountant, where it's literally, give me your numbers. Here's what you pay the government. See you next year. Or, pay Becky at the front counter on your
Yeah,
way out,
yeah,
that is I mean, that's like shockingly different,
yeah,
outcomes and results, I think. And so to me, I just wasn't, I've only had my own experience, and I haven't like shopped around and, hopped around from one person to the next, in terms of having those CPA relationships. But I just realized through this, effort and working through these topics, that is actually situations people find themselves in where they have a marginal support or help from their CPA. And so I
mm,
think the takeaway, the lesson is, go find yourself a really good, strategically minded and business minded CPA that ideally has e-commerce expertise that can help you optimize for tax efficiency and business structure, legal structure, all of that, to really make sure that you're optimized, because failure to do that means that you're missing out on huge opportunities,
yeah.
or can be, so.
I agree a lot with this. I would say, I mean, I like you. I had quite a lucky experience in the sense that I had um, the first accountant I really worked with in any seriousness on business really came from a coaching community, which is the same one that sort of pitched me into getting into Amazon via a course. So she had a background as a financial coach as well as
Mhm.
a CPA or chartered accountant, which I think is a critical distinction. I think I chose her. Well, it wasn't partly luck. I chose her because I thought she would be that kind of person. I was right, but I think the distinction for me is you want somebody who is able to be a financial coach for you as well as just doing your taxes. And
Right.
it's a little bit like a legal advisor versus a lawyer. So, for example, lawyers will help you with real estate transactions. We've recently remortgaged some property. We bought some a while ago, so property meaning real estate. It's ironic you guys use the word real estate because it means royal and you don't have royalty. But anyway, it's a hangover from the British days, I
I have
guess.
no idea what you're talking about, but that sounds very interesting. We need to
Anyway,
dive into that at some time.
real estate anyway, property real estate. So
Yes,
we
yes.
bought some a while ago, and our lawyer did a ton of work, and they didn't really advise
Mhm.
us, and I think they just did a load of stuff that ticking legal boxes, right, which is
Yeah,
a different value. And I really think a great CPA, it's really simple. They need to be good at taxes, and they need to be good at explaining it, which is it's just two Venn diagrams that cross over to give quite a small percentage of the population of CPAs. And you've found a good
yeah,
one, and I did as
yeah.
well, and as you said, many don't. So I think that's the key.
Yeah, I think
Find yourself
that
somebody who's an advisor as
it
well.
is the key, and it unlocks massive profitability,
Mm,
in my view. And so I would just, if you find yourself in the situation where you're really, really unhappy with your tax, preparing process or service or person you work with, shop around.
definitely.
Ask for recommendations from other people, and really find somebody who you can lean into in terms of tapping their brain and expertise. That a good CPA will work with, you know dozens or hundreds or whatever of businesses,
Mm,
that they can speak to your business from the, I guess, what you might call the advantaged position of having seen so many other businesses. None of it's confidential information that they'll share. It's just, uh, you know models and process and ideas, but it will be refined through the fire of hundreds and hundreds of business for years and years and years of the journey, and that wisdom is synthesized so profoundly by those people. If they'll share it with you, you will really accelerate your journey towards profitability. Yeah.
I agree entirely with that. Now, the next point that you had to do with was really to do with unlocking that knowledge that
Hmm.
CPAs or financial specialists can have. So,
Yeah.
what's that insight?
Yeah. The final one on our list here is, I think what I've realized is people frequently don't even know the questions to ask to help unlock profitability in their business, or don't have the formulation of kind of the areas of business to really poke into and probe into in a way that unlocks lessons and specific tactics or strategies. And I'm not saying that to be kind of a judgmental, but I it just strikes me that a good question is the foundation of change in your business, and migrating from less profitable to more profitable in your business. And those sets of questions around all the different various types or aspects of your business, from staffing to facilities to marketing and advertising costs to inventory management, inventory payment, to tax and legal structure, international structures, and on and on. I mean, there's so many areas that impact your profitability, and having insight into how to approach those and even ask questions, I think, is the foundation. I would love a book, to be honest, and I've started to think about this, like, give me a book of 100 amazing questions to ask my CPA.
That's a
And
good book.
that would be a
That sounds
great
like a
book.
good book. Yeah, it would
There's
be.
like,
Yeah, absolutely.
what am I supposed to ask about this topic or that topic? Or because just seeing the question, be like, oh yeah, that's a thing. Oh, okay. And it's hard for me to, I mean, I can't do it in this podcast, but list all of the questions that are relevant. But you get the idea that in every one of these business categories, there are ways you can run profitably and ways you can waste money. And no one intentionally wastes money. Like, only a masochist intentionally wastes money in their business. Nobody does that. You accidentally waste money, and you don't uncover that unless you have the ability to ask questions and probe into it. So I think that was an interesting takeaway, it just spurs me on to want to do more work for our
Mm.
community, and to really research more myself, and put things out in terms of content and maybe books or whatever, to really help people get after this stuff in a professional, work a day, trade craft level, non shiny object, non
Yeah,
salesy way. It's like,
yeah, yeah.
this is just yeoman's type work. Like, show up and, like, start using the tools in your toolbox to sort it out. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there for us as coaches, business leaders, and teachers to help people.
100%. By the way, I've been thinking on very similar lines myself. I mean, I don't think it's been because I mean, you and I have discussed profits every so often, but we discuss a lot of things. But I think I've been just coming to more and more the same conclusion myself, looking at my clients' businesses, thinking there's so much opportunity here, but there's so much waste. And I'm not equipped on my own to do this, but I know some amazing
Hmm.
accountants and specialists, and I want to kind of put together a structure that makes sense. I've got the pieces of it, and I'm feeling the same. And it's going to be harder to sell because it's not a shiny object. But what I
Yeah.
do think is, it kind of is. I think it's a perception thing. To the point that the overall theme that's emerging for me from this podcast is, it's about mentality. That there seems to be
Hmm.
this thought that, whatever it is, Facebook marketing, retargeting, the
Yeah.
latest Amazon ads
Shiny
platform,
objects. Yeah.
yeah, are therefore going to do what? They're going to drive revenue, and that's going to blow your business up. Well, what do you mean by blow your business up? Well,
Hmm.
revenue isn't your money. But if you think I could sell my business, there's actual real money in your pocket, and I've seen multiple ones of my friends do this with Amazon businesses, and will continue to see it, I'm sure. Actually, £1 million cash coming into your bank. That's real
Hmm.
money. That's not theory. That's not something made up by an accountant.
Yeah.
That's enterprise value. In other words, you sold the business for X. that is a reflection of profit times multiple. That's real money. And if we can get excited about the profit number going up and the defensibility going up, meaning actual
Yeah.
money in your account, that's when it's a shiny object, actually. And I think really the closest we're getting to a shiny object around profitability is aggregators. Everyone's already talking about them in the
Mhm.
Amazon space.
Yeah.
And then people are aware of it's a multiple of X. And then they're really thinking about their bottom line and taking that
Yeah.
number more seriously than they used to. I think that's actually a healthy development on the back of something which is like anything else, maybe too much of a bubble and a trend. But
Yeah.
the thing I would say with a CPA, my experience is to ask them simple questions. I mean, first of all, as a
Mhm.
CEO, if you're setting strategic goals for your business, how does this help get me there, or is this getting in the way? But another way is to just stand back and exactly what you said. They've had the luxury of insight, well, the luxury, they've had the fire of insight into hundreds of small businesses in their experience, and just say, okay, in this kind of business model, what are the opportunities and threats you see? What do you typically see as being an opportunity which we could take advantage of, and what typically brings down a business like this? And then let them give them
Mhm.
their insights, because
Yeah.
that's quite a broad question. They're probably very well equipped to answer because of the patterns that emerge after hundreds and hundreds of such consultations.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, man. Well, that's the list, and I really, really hope that it's a spark some interest and in insight into how to go forward successfully towards profitability. And I would just encourage everybody. It's a perfect time of year as we're recording this. It's the end of the year. It might be live on our show on early in the new year, but nonetheless, whenever you're hearing it, it's always a perfect time, I guess, to think about what's the profitability level in your business and what are your systems and processes set up to clearly show you and what opportunities exist. And so, yeah, I just hope that people really take the time to think through this. The biggest the biggest worry that I would have or regret that I would hate to see people make is to have sold millions in their business and then look back and realize they could have been much, much more profitable, twice as profitable, three times more profitable. They could have had so much more profit from the effort. And to me, it's almost like a stewardship thing as I think about it. It's like, it's not actually about the specific number. It's just about stewarding the engine that you've built and really getting optimal, horsepower out of it or mileage or whatever your metric is for profit. And that's my hope for everybody is that you take this insight from this conversation. And, we don't even have the Profit Habits content available now. The workshop's over. I think we'll make an evergreen version of it, but there are 17 habits that we work through, and there are key insights for all of them that help unlock, information for us as operators. So that's my hope with all of this is that people just get better and better at managing their
Hmm.
their business and see it change their life and change their family and change their community and and really change the world because businesses can change the world and that's the hope.
Yeah, I think that's a great ambition. I also think sort of stewarding the engine you've built. I was just thinking, my metaphor springs to mind is those giant American cars with like 7-liter engines or whatever you guys measure it in
Hmm.
cubic inches or
I
something
have
odd.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, and versus a Formula One car. Formula One car is
Hmm.
limited to about a 2-liter engine, but they scream along at like 20,000 revs per minute and produce
Hmm.
incredible amount of power and speed.
Hmm.
So that's for me like an incredibly
Yeah.
highly
Yeah.
tuned business that spits out profit like crazy versus a big lumbering business that is producing a lot of revenue, but is very, very wasteful and inefficient.
Yeah.
And I think that
That's an
there is,
interesting metaphor.
well, I'm just
Formula
taking
One
your
engine
engine metaphor.
versus
Yeah,
my Dodge truck's
is a Dodge
5.8
truck,
liter.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
nothing against the Dodge truck, but the thing is
Yeah.
to not devalue either of them. I mean, either
Right.
of them could be the perfect vehicle for you, but the point is to not just see the size of the engine and that's
Hmm.
it. That
Yeah.
is not the end of how an engine works. And any Formula One engineer will tell you it's a lot harder to engineer, but it's a beautiful, incredible thing.
Yeah.
So there you go. It's engineering, it's financial re-engineering is one of
Yep.
those words people use. And I think that's an exciting thing. So there you go. A Formula One car as a metaphor, maybe a bit sexier as a shiny object.
Yeah.
Go. Would you mind just summarizing those? I think it's 7 sort of takeaways that you had. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah. In summary, people are jaded when it comes to the topic of finance and profitability, defensive, untrusting, maybe burned out, maybe feeling burned. And we all need to think about our psychology and whether we have those negative sentiments that we bring to the party and don't approach it open handed and with a positive frame of mind. Second takeaway is many people would avoid the topic if they could, and would prefer to avoid it until crisis happens. Third insight is people come to the realization that profit as the focus is central over time. And the first focus is always top line sales, which is fine. But the maturing business owner realizes that profitability is key. The fourth big takeaway is that the single biggest mistake we see people make is not investing in profit focused education and learning more for their own management ability in their business. The fifth takeaway is getting an informal mentor locally that you can meet with. Sixth takeaway is getting a really good CPA that adds value and strategic insight for business efficiency, operations, and tax, efficiency as well. And then the seventh takeaway is all of us need to get better at figuring out what questions to ask of our bookkeeper, our CPA, and ourselves about how to unlock profitability in our business. And I think if we do these things and we focus on them, we're going to be better off in this coming year. So there you have it. That's the summary.
I like it. Turning your Dodge truck into Formula One business.
There you go.
That sounds like a very odd ambition, but you get the idea. So you have, I believe, a sort of virtual CFO service that's come off the back of some of this Profit Habits
Oh,
workshop.
yeah.
Is that available to the general public, or is that only for your members, or how does that work?
Yeah, no, actually, Zach Martin is the one who helped co-teach the workshop. He's a CPA with all the background and consulting. He is doing some slots of time with us now going forward every week as basically a virtual CFO in people's businesses. So Kyle and I focus on Shopify. I focus on Shopify. Kyle focuses on Amazon with people, and Zach now is coming alongside some coaching clients. He only has a limited number of slots, and we're basically bolting him into, or that service into, our consultancy. And so if that's of interest, you could hit us up on winningonshopify.com. That's our best current site to use in terms of contact form. And we can talk to you more about that. But it's really a pretty short list of hours he has, to be honest. But we'll relaunch the Profit Habits Workshop again in the spring, and probably make an evergreen version of it. So that would be the other takeaway for going forward. Yep.
I like it. By the way, just as a sort of backup to the hilt, really, the importance of getting a virtual or fractional CFO. I spoke to Jim Mann, who's a friend of mine for several years, British Amazon's fellow. I think he sold a 7-figure business a while ago, and he works for Thrasio these days. And he said the two big takeaways for him were supplier credit is an incredible thing. Utilize that to the max. That's a sort of technical hint, if you like. But the other thing is get a fractional CFO. Incredibly important in his view. So there you go.
Wow.
So if you want to build a business that will be acquired by the biggest PE guys in this space, I think to date they've raised $4 billion or something close to that. By the time you hear it, it'll be out of date because they keep raising more money. And those guys take that seriously. So that's a good hint that you really should take that seriously. I think that's an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, we're calling it a virtual CFO. I guess fractional CFO is the phrase too. So that's very
fractional and virtual, I suppose, is both.
Yeah.
In other words, like you get an insight for 1 hour a week as opposed
Yeah.
to somebody 40 hours a week dedicated to your business, or whatever the method or the rhythm is. I can't stress enough. I think that could be the biggest game changer for most people out there. I mean, they're obsessed with marketing already because that's what we all obsess with and get marketed to, right? I can't stress enough how important I think that is. And it's not just my idea; it's the biggest acquisition guys in the space of e-commerce right now.
Huge value, and I think the reason he said that is because if he's being generous to the people who are listening to that comment, then what he's saying is optimize your profitability and you'll optimize your business value and you'll optimize your exit.
Yes,
have $1 million business that makes zero profit and see how much people are going to offer you for it.
And well, another way of putting it is it is not $1 million business. If you're measuring stuff by revenue, but in terms of enterprise value, it is zero. The enterprise value of a business with no profit is zero.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So that's another way of putting it. The final thing to say, I guess, is as ever, folks, if you're enjoying the show, don't forget to rate the podcast on Apple iTunes or Apple Podcasts, I should call it, and subscribe on your podcast player of choice. It's very nice to see on Spotify that our subscribers or followers are growing pretty steadily. I have to say that they've been growing pretty steadily for quite a while.
Well, I've been telling the audience for over a year that we're #1 e-commerce show on Spotify when you put a dash between the E and the C for e-commerce. And but it's blown up, man. And I
Yeah,
think we're number one for no dash between the E and the C as well when you search for e-commerce. At least that's what happens when I've seen people do it, and I've done it in Spotify. I don't know how rigged those customized results are when you search for items, but nonetheless, we're having a great turnout in Spotify, and it's an honor. If you're watching or listening on Spotify, be sure to do whatever you can to like the show, give it a heart, I think, and that puts it into your favorites or something like that. So thank you, everybody who's checking us out on Spotify. Really appreciate it.
absolutely. Well, it's been a great show. Thanks for sharing some very interesting psychology of profits. I think that's quite an interesting topic.
Yep.
Interesting discussion.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much. And there you have it. That's a podcast. Good one. That was exactly 1 hour since we started. So
There you go. We're
wow.
getting into our rhythm.
Man.
Good.
Well, thank you so much for watching live with us, everybody. And for those who are watching via replay, really appreciate it. And your support of the show makes a big difference. So give us a like on this video wherever you're watching it via replay, and feel free to comment underneath. We'll try our best to watch for comments as well for those who are watching via replay. And feel free to reach out to us if you want to connect with Michael in his mastermind groups and consultancy, and then with me with mine. And we'd be honored to serve you in any way we can. We love this stuff.
Yeah.
I know that about Michael, and it's true
Yeah.
for me and Kyle as well. It's just fun. It's just a blast to work with people.
It's
So,
great when you can just see something that is a big pain point for somebody. Say, I know how to not fix it completely, but how to really improve that. It's just it's that kind of that insight thing that I think is exciting, and that's it. And above all, in the profits and profit measurement side, that's the case more than anywhere else. I think that I
too
see.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. All right, buddy. Good times. Have a great evening there in London.
Thank you.
And
And
we're
you
off to the
have a
races
nice day
here
in
in
Seattle.
Seattle. Yeah. All right.
Excellent.
Bye,
Take
buddy.
care.